Hi, I'm Lori.
And I'm Kevin, and this is No Longer Ashamed.
We are survivors of childhood sexual abuse.
And we're here to share with you that if you're a survivor, you don't have to be alone.
Our logo is a salamander, and the reason is a fire salamander can survive a fire, and you have survived a fire.
We want to help you with your journey to healing and hope.
We are all survivors together, and we walk this journey together, and you are not alone.
By telling our stories, we are hoping that you will have the courage to share your stories as well and find your voice.
Because stories are so important, and for so long I know that I wouldn't tell my story, but when I finally shared my story, that's when I got my freedom.
And this is our journey and your journey to healing and hope. So come with us. The reason I wanted to talk about when is it a good time to talk about your abuse is that something happened recently when we were in a group. Charnel and I were in a group, and someone in the group just basically dropped the bomb on the group. And she not only talked about the abuse, but she went into pretty graphic detail, and it wasn't an appropriate setting, so to speak, because...
Do you feel like you can tell that story? Or like, do you have, were you afraid she'll hear?
I don't think it'll upset her much. It was, we were in a Bible study, and we wanted to talk about, our Bible study, we talk about the sermon that we had the week before and so forth. But, and in our Bible study group, we like to talk about relational stuff, talk about what's going on in our lives. It's not just focused on just the Bible. So she asked if she said she's been going through all this stuff and she's been writing about it. And she asked if she can read what she's been writing in her journal. And we're like, yeah, well, we didn't expect that. She didn't really forewarn us, and we didn't really know that she had been an abuse survivor, and we didn't really expect it to be that graphic. And so it really shut down everyone in a lot of ways. And then afterwards, she just basically said, I don't really want to talk about this now. She just wanted to bring it up and leave it there. And that was really hard for, I think, all of us as far as what do you do with that? So it brought up the topic of, well, when is it okay to talk about it, and how much do you talk about it? Because our mantra is tell your story. I mean, we really preach that because it is so important to tell your story.
It is, but I think we always say find someone. Mm-hmm. And, here's the thing. There's two sides to this. One is we want people, if they're going to tell their story, to find somebody safe. And so I think that that's really important, and even specifying one person or maybe a counselor or somebody, a coach that's qualified. But also, there's that side of it is if you are in that situation where somebody tells you something and you're in a situation, a party, a Bible study, it's inappropriate. Like, what's the next best step? Like, here you do this podcast and yet it made you uncomfortable. So, I think kind of exploring that a little of saying, oh, whoa, I want to stop you now. Is this maybe something you want to share in private? Or I don't know how that would have played out.
Yeah.
But sometimes when people are so in trauma and they're triggered, they're liable to just throw up on whoever they're around and tell them the whole story. And like you say, it leaves everybody so uncomfortable because they don't know what to do. And it, like you said, it's so graphic. And so let's first, which side do you want to look at first? Is like if you're being told or if you're the teller?
From a teller point of view, I think this was a safe setting for her, but it wasn't necessarily appropriate because, for one thing, generally we don't talk about such intimate stuff in the group setting. We talk to each other a lot, and we text and so forth, so it would have been better more one-on-one. Mm-hmm. And for another thing, she didn't really forewarn us about what the topic was she wanted to talk about or how graphic she was going to talk about. And so I think we do preach, find someone safe, but that also means it's important to have their consent, frankly. I mean, if you're going to drop this bombshell on them, you really should let them know what you're going to be talking about and why you need to talk about it, and basically ask their permission, because not everyone can handle it. And it wasn't like we couldn't handle it in the group, but she also didn't let us have input. We were basically, she dropped it on us and then said, "That's it. You guys, I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to talk about," it was really,
Can I ask you a question? She, when she told it, was she emotional or was she really stoic?
She was a little of both, but the problem was some of the people in our group got very emotional.
Yeah. Because when somebody's telling their story, often they're so detached from it still that they're very stoic, and they don't recognize how bad it is because it's their norm.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's really good to look at your environment. And yes, I like what you said. This was a safe place, but yet it was probably a mixed group, which would, in my mind, would make it inappropriate.
Yeah.
So, it's like, if you are going to share, maybe do a trial with one safe person.
That's excellent. Yeah. I think that's really good is when you're going to share, this was a safe group for her, but maybe talk to one of the persons in the group, or bring it up with someone that you feel comfortable. And so you're not creating a situation where everyone's just unable to respond or know how to respond.
Yeah, I think that it's one thing if you're going to choose to tell someone your story, but if you are, then I believe you have to be open to their response. If you believe, they're a safe person, then part of that makes me think about why people don't tell, right? Because they're afraid of being judged. So it felt to me, when you were telling me, it felt like she was this little girl. She's telling her mom and her dad, and she knows they're not going to believe her. So it's a hit and run. And that is so unfair. It's so unfair.
Yeah. Now, one of the things I do want to advocate is that it is important to tell your story, and it's important to get it out there, but maybe not in the manner that, you share every graphic detail. And I think that was part of the issue, was she went into very graphic detail, and that was a little shocking for some of the people in the group. And I think it's important to advocate for survivors. It's important to advocate when you are a survivor that, yes, this does happen, and this happened to me. I think, and I think that's never really inappropriate. It's just how much you share.
What happens is you traumatize the people. So you're traumatized, you're sharing your trauma. And I'll be really vulnerable. That happened to me early on in my recovery. Something had happened in the news, and I hadn't remembered yet because, I had repressed memories. So I was triggered and I was reacting. And so I went to this group, and it was a safe group, and it was all women. But I shared something, and I think that once I started, I couldn't stop. And I didn't really know, like, it wasn't me. I think I was in that dissociated state, but somebody opened the door for me to say something, and I did. And I said too much, and they saw me as an adult rather than a child. And so they all started giving me advice and almost like accusing me of doing something wrong. And the counselor, the leader was a counselor. She didn't know what to do. So she didn't protect me. All these people attacked me, and then she had to go to counseling that night. And so because I shared my story, and the person wasn't, they invited it, but then they weren't able to handle it. And so I think that, like you say, it may be a safe place, but maybe if your story is really traumatic, which you may not know, you may not understand that, is actually get a professional first. Call a hotline first. Like maybe your first line is to tell somebody who's trained to handle it.
Yeah.
And then they can reflect to you, this is a really hard story. And then you start to know, oh, maybe this isn't something I tell at the dinner table.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Because I didn't even know, because I didn't even know. Yeah. I had no memory. So when it came out, I was like.
And I remember when I first was dealing with this, I wanted to tell everyone, because I wanted
You wanted validation.
Validation, yes. I wanted to get validation for what I'd been through. Mm-hmm. But I understand that, and I think that's important. I think that it is important for survivors to get validation. Look, we've been through, but there's ways of doing it without traumatizing the people we're sharing with. And even recently, I was working with someone, a guy I've worked with quite a bit, and we were at this company that had these huge sound booths they use for testing stuff. And while we were there, there was this one sound booth that was the size of a living room, basically. And you could go in there and you could yell as loud as you want. And the sound just sucked it up. It was amazing. And I was like, I need this room for my podcast. I need this. And he was like, oh, you have a podcast? I'm like, yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years. He's like, oh, what is it? Is it about biking? Because I talk about biking all the time. And I went, no, it's for survivors of abuse. And he went, oh. And that was it. He just went, oh. And that was the end. And, that wasn't a traumatic thing for him. He didn't dismiss me, but he just was like, okay, I get it. And that's, I think, that's a valid way of getting recognition without being in someone's face, without forcing it upon them. And I understand when I was first getting help and therapy and getting recognition, I was kind of forcing it in people's faces. And I think that's just a little disrespectful for people to force them to deal with your trauma when it wasn't their issue or their doing. Or we don't have to force our trauma upon people. It's important to get validation. It's important to recognize the magnitude of the issue, but we need to do it in a way that isn't disrespectful to people.
Mm-hmm. And I think recognizing that, if you are recognizing that you have a story, test the waters. Maybe say, I was abused, and see how they handle it, like in slow pieces. But again, it's so important to get your story out no matter what. And whether it's telling your family or that safe person, but you're going to get the best response if you go to a counselor, because nothing is going to shock them. Mm-hmm. So like if you're trying to share your story and the people around you, their eyes are bugging out of their head, it's like, that's going to affect you back. It's affecting them. It's going to affect you. And so I think that it would be easy then to go, well, I'm just never going to tell my story. No, there is a way. There's a way to tell it. And as you start telling it, then you're going to have to really read the room and see when it's appropriate. I mean, remember we had Tracy on and she shared her story with a Bible study group, and boy, it did not go well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It did not go well. And she walked away feeling more judged.
Yeah. And
that
I think
was not good.
That's kind of like when I talk about my podcast at work. I've talked about it several times, and that's kind of like testing the waters. I'm just, I do a podcast. It's for survivors. I've had several guys go, oh, that's really cool. Wow, good for you. That's really awesome. And I've also had that, and you don't have to elaborate. Just saying, I'm a survivor. I was abused. You don't have to go into it. You don't have to force it upon any more detail upon it, but just putting it out there sometimes is all you have to do. You don't have to tell them
all the whole,
the whole story. But I think it is important to share. Yeah, I'm a survivor. Even when it comes up that something happened, there's all this stuff in the news and they talk about, and you can just say, I'm a survivor too. Mm-hmm. And that's one way of just kind of breaking the ice and seeing if someone is willing to talk about it and comfortable talking about it without forcing it upon them.
Right. And I think you bring up a valid point, because we want to raise awareness, and we want we want to know that your next door neighbor or that person, that there are survivors all around you every day, and that, we shouldn't have to be ashamed of our story. But on the other hand, we're talking about a subject that is very traumatic. And if you happen to be saying it in a room and there's a child, you really need to read your room and pay attention. And also, if you are the recipient of that, and it's really hard for you, is finding somebody you can debrief with, somebody you can talk to. Even if they say, you can't tell anyone, you might have to say, I have a counselor, I'm going to tell my counselor.
Yeah.
I think it was brave of her to share her story, but also it seems wrong to not let people be able to allow for any kind of response, because knowing you and Charnel, you would have responded very well. You would have said, we're so sorry that happened to you. It wasn't your fault. You would have said all the right things, but the fact that she shut you down, she kept herself from actually getting a good response, which could have also opened the door for the rest of the group to say, I know this was really tough. Does anybody want to share anything? Was this hard for you? Did it trigger? Like, you could have done a whole coaching thing there, but because she shut it down, you couldn't open the door for that. And it could have been a great learning and awareness opportunity.
Well, we did actually at the time talk about it with her, and then just basically we started doing that. And she's like, I'm done. After we kind of approached it, she was like, I'm done. Let's not talk about this anymore. And so it really made us wonder, what was her motive for actually bringing it up? Because, and that's important. If you're going to share in this setting, before you do it, try to understand what your motive is for sharing at that time. There's certain people you want to share with. There's certain people that you feel safe with. Well, why do you want to share it? Is it just to get validation? Is it to get help? Or are you just trying to get it off your chest and be done? And if so, you're kind of laying a burden on people without letting them address it. So when we did talk, when she did bring, after she was done, we both did kind of say, wow, that wasn't your fault. I'm so glad you're kind of recognizing this. We kind of talked about it and talked about the things you say. Wow, I'm so glad you're able to talk about it. I'm so glad those things. And then she kind of shut it down because she just didn't want to go any further. And so why did she need to bring it up? I don't know. Makes you wonder, if you're going to bring it up, you should expect some kind of response. And if so, what are you looking for? Are you looking for just someone to recognize what you've been through? There's reasons for sharing, and I think there's a lot of good reasons for sharing. But if you're just trying to burden someone, that's not necessarily a good reason.
Yeah. I think in the recovery model, of course, we're coming from the angle, that we're a coach. And if somebody shares their story, how much of our story do we share, is like paying attention to that. And like I say in the beginning, you may not realize how traumatic it is, but she did write it out, but maybe she, maybe she didn't realize how, because it was her norm. But still, I think as we go, these are things that we can educate on. Number one, be careful while you tell your story. Yes, tell your story, but find a professional or find maybe one person in the beginning. And then as you go, modify that story, read the room, know where you are, know who you're talking to. If there's men in the room and you're a woman, don't get graphic. If there's women in the room and you're a man, don't get graphic. It's
if
not
there's
that
children.
Yeah.
I think it's important. We've always talked about find the safe person, but also find the appropriate time and the appropriate way to talk about it. You're not always going to talk about it the same with everyone. And just like the guys I work with, I'll just tell them I'm doing this podcast. As for survivors, if they ask me more, I'll tell them more, but I'm not going to dump on them.
I know sometimes, like I've been at an event, a wedding, a funeral, something, and you get talking and somebody, if you're a good listener, they'll start telling you things and you're like, whoa, this is not the time or place,
Yeah, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah, and there's people walking around hearing bits and pieces. And so I think really making sure first that think of the worst case scenario if somebody freaks out. So if you're going to share your story and someone's going to freak out, you're not going to want to be out in public. You're not going to want to be in a group of people. You're probably going to want to be one-on-one because the chance of freak out is a lot less.
Yeah. And consider their side as well. I think it's important. I know for me, There were times I was very inconsiderate of what I talked about. And it wasn't intentionally to traumatize them, but we don't always recognize how traumatic our story can be, which isn't our fault.
Mm-hmm.
But it is important to recognize that we can be damaging someone. So
with you, when you said you wanted to tell your story to everyone, you wanted validation, but you were kind of in people's faces. Did you just what were you thinking? You weren't thinking, I want to hurt you, but
no.
Do you remember back what you were thinking, why you just needed everybody to know?
Because no one had talked about the stuff I'd been through as far as being a man and being a survivor. At that time, it was recognized that, women had survived abuse, and I don't think it was recognized how common it was for a woman, but it was beginning to be that way. But no one recognized that men were survivors, that boys could be abused or were abused.
So you wanted people to know.
I want people to know that I had survived and also what I'd gone through because of it, because I was angry about what I'd gone through. And so in a way, I was kind of in your face about it with some people, mainly because it was almost like you see things in media and movies and TV where they kind of almost joke about it. They make fun of what happens to kids, especially boys, that, oh yeah, that's a funny thing. And they don't recognize that hurts sometimes. And so I was angry about it. And so I wanted people to know I'd been through a lot, and it wasn't my fault, and I was pissed about it.
So, and you'd already been in counseling and been in a support group?
Yeah, I was going to counseling and going to support group, and I think that was encouraging me because I was finding out there were other men that were going through this. And in a way that made me want to get it out more, to get all these other men's voices out more. It's like that tattoo I wanted to get. I wanted to have it on the surface right there. You can't miss it. I've been through fire. I've been through this and I survived, and there are others, and, you need to recognize that. That was kind of my feeling. You need to recognize us. And I get that. It's important. And our stories are important, but we can't use them in a way that's damaging or disturbing. It's not important to hurt others with our story.
I want to say, ask yourself, what would the 5 years from now me person do? Because, you're still kind of reactive. And like you say, you're angry and probably blaming and doing the work. And so that is hard. I mean, this is a very hard topic. And just like Nathan told us with the book, nobody wants to make that movie. Nobody wants to talk about this, but yet it has to be. It has to be talked about. And if we do talk about it, people are going to protect their boys. Because right now they think, oh, we got to protect our girls, but they need to know, moms need to know, and dads, that you got to protect your boys too.
Yeah. And what we can do is do it in a way that isn't going to disturb or traumatize or affect people, but it will get their recognition. They will understand that this is an issue without making it something they don't want to hear. Because the problem is when you traumatize them like that, they don't want to hear it. And so they block it out. Right. And they also think, what's wrong with that person? Why do you have to go there? You don't want people to go, I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to listen to him. He's just out there. So we have to do it in a way that's not going to turn people away.
Yeah, so, I was thinking how it's an art to learn how to tell your story without telling your story. So I was able to say that I said something in a group, but I didn't say what I said in the group. I just said the effect that it had. And for me, and all the years, I'm very careful when and where I share my story, because one, I have to be careful because people will go, oh, well, your story's so bad. Mine isn't.
Mm-hmm.
This happened to me. Well, I don't want anybody to think their story isn't valid because of what I went through. And so there is a lot of layers of it. But I think and that's why I think getting counseling and getting a coach or getting with someone and working through it is so important, and doing the daily work, because you are going to be your best self, and you're not going to have to, like, in 5 years go back and apologize to people and make amends for abusing them with your abuse.
Traumatizing them with your trauma.
Yeah. And it's like, no, people wait so long. Why? Because nobody's going to believe them. So then when they finally get the courage, they're like, you're going to listen to me, dang it. And so maybe by us helping people tell their story, maybe they'll tell it sooner, and there won't be so much punch behind it for the people that may not be the best audience.
Well, and there's appropriate places and times to tell your story. Like when we interview someone, that's appropriate because we expect to hear their story. The people that listen to us expect to hear their story. Mm-hmm. But dropping it on someone unexpectedly, I mean, that's not always okay. So I think this is kind of a way of saying, yes, your story is important. Your story needs to be told. We want to hear your story, but you have to kind of fine tune it for certain audiences. You have to pick and choose who you tell it to, when you tell it to, how you tell it, how much you tell. Mm-hmm. But do tell your story. Find the right time, the right place, the right person. Tell us. We're always willing to listen. And I think even like just saying the little things like I do at work. Yeah, I do this podcast. It's for survivors. That's not gonna traumatize someone. If they're curious, they'll ask about it. If it kind of disturbs them, they won't go there. And that's okay, because it's not gonna freak them out.
Right.
So just be careful, I guess is what I'm saying. Be careful.
Well, and I think too, like you say, there's layers, but there's also levels. Like when you're first telling, you might be so raw, you might not really know what you're doing. You might still be dissociated, right? So you may not be realizing it, but as you start to realize it, and you start to realize the power of your story. And like I used to say to my youngest son, you want to use your powers for good, not evil. Use that power, use that story to raise awareness, but not to hurt other people, and just so that we can get the relief. And hopefully now, this many years later, there's more people that are professionals. There are more people that we can go and say everything we need to say.
Yeah.
And counseling is a great place for that, for all the gory details, because those have to come out.
Yeah.
Right.
It is important to be able to tell your full story in the right setting.
We're as sick as our secrets. So whatever we keep back, we're still going to be sick. So we've got to tell, but there's levels and layers. And I think that's a good thing to look at.
And I think our next thing we want to look at is resources. I think our next step is to maybe talk about more of the resources that are available, because there are so many now.
Yeah.
There's so many more than when I was going through this, and you. There's a lot of resources. They're very helpful, and there's so many to choose from. So I want to look at what those resources are, how to find them, what kinds there are available, and what might work for you, and so forth. So that's coming up.
Yeah, two things. One is, if you are struggling, the new crisis line is 988. 988. And the second thing is, when you listen to this podcast and you have a resource, please drop it in the comments below on the Facebook page, because that'll help us be able to help more people. If you know of a resource, just drop it in the comment box and let us know what's out there.
Yeah, if there's a resource that's been good for you, that's been helping you, we want to hear about it, because we might not know about it. We only know so much, and we're not therapists, we're not counselors, but we just want to guide you to those resources that can help you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our story, it matters. It matters so much. And yes, tell it, but also pay attention.
Yeah. Read the room. Read the room.
Yeah.
Who do you tell it to? When do you tell it to? And how?
Yeah. And mostly too, because in the beginning, you do want to protect yourself. Like I said, you might tell your story and you're stoic because to you, that's normal. And everybody else is like, that's not supposed to happen to little kids. And that's part of the beauty of telling your story is people's reaction when they go, yeah, no, that wasn't your fault. That should never have happened to you as a child. And so, but starting to recognize, and if you're getting counseling and getting support, you might be getting the validation so you won't need it out here. So you'll be able to tell the story out here in a way that raises awareness and that will help save children rather than just telling it for shock factor.
Yeah. And basically for me, it was getting revenge. I think getting revenge on people that didn't understand. And I don't know why I needed to get revenge on these people. It wasn't their fault. But in a way, I think I was just trying to get revenge on people that didn't recognize what had happened. And that didn't help me.
Yeah. In your mind, it might have been, nobody protected me. You didn't protect me. You didn't, even though it's not the same people. But again, that's why I love seeing a counselor or coach is because then you can walk through the process and get to a place where you don't have that need to, because when you heal yourself, I heard the best quote. Her name is Alex L. I can't remember the name of the book she wrote, but she says, healing yourself is an act of community service.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It is. It's important for you, but it's also so important for everyone you care about is to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
We can only, you can't give if your cup is empty.
That's right. Or if you're trying to get revenge, you're not healing yourself, you're trying to get revenge. That's a community disservice.
And it was intentional.
Yeah. So next week, resources. And if you can think of any, go ahead and drop them in so that we'll have some stuff to work on to present next time.
So that's it for today.
We are going to have a prayer time if you want to stick with us. If not, we believe in you.
We want to hear from you. We want to hear your stories.
If you like this podcast, please rate and review because that's how other people can find us. And we really want to spread this message.
Father, I thank you for all your blessings, especially that you are willing to listen to our stories, all of our stories, and all of our hurt, all of our sadness, all of our pain, and comfort us. And we know that you grieve with us, but we're not hurting you with our stories. You want to be there. You want to hear our stories, Lord. And I just pray for anyone listening that they would have the courage to share their stories, but they would also find the right resources, the right people, the right places and times to share their story. But most of all, just the courage to share their story, the courage to get the validation they deserve and get the help they deserve and get the healing they deserve, Lord. And I just pray that they would turn to you and you would be their comfort in this, and that you would listen to them and comfort them and also help them find the help that they need. In your name I pray.
Father, my heart just aches for that person who is just hurting, who needs so desperately to share their story. Lord, I pray that you provide the place, the time, the person, and like Kevin said, the courage, because we know once the story's out, then we can begin to deal with it and we can be able to get the help and not only help for ourselves, but then raise awareness. I just think so much of Julie sharing her story about being trafficked and how hard that was and embarrassing it was, but yet all the people that she's helping by using her story in a powerful way that is helping people. And Lord, that's the value of our story, that we can look at it and we can use it to further the cause, to help people. And Lord, that stories are so important. And so Lord, I pray that you will provide the place, the person, the conversation, the open door for them to be able to share what they need to share, and then find a counselor, find a coach, whatever they need to do, Lord, that they will see that there is freedom on the other side of that fear. I thank you so much for what you're doing in our lives, and that you do love us, Lord, and that this was never your intention for children to be hurt, but it is a fact of life. And thank you that we can start to do something about it. In your son's holy name, amen. Amen.